evening, good afternoon. This is Hit and Hustle from IRSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Grateful Long, and with me, as always, is Jamie Ueyama, Jamie University. We've got a fun show for everybody today. We've got Kaleb Smith is going to make an announcement between, I think it's like Notre Dame and Texas Tech at 6 o'clock Eastern time. So that's about 1 hour from now. I think Matt's feeling pretty good about Notre Dame's chances of landing him, and he's a wide receiver from Texas, so we're going to go over that, and we're going to look over some film. We're going to talk about his game and that sort of thing. We're going to do more portal stuff, and then we'll talk about some team stuff when if people get into the chat and get in the comments and they want to talk about the team or whatever you want to talk about. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in so far. As always, at the beginning, people are start trickling in. And so we thank you for watching. If this is your first time watching the show, or if you're watching on replay, please, as always, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We would really appreciate it. It really helps out the channel and all those other things. And we're going to start it off with Joe Bro in the chat who says, what's good? So Jamie, what's good?
Everything's good, man. I like this time of year. You know, I think while it is slightly more exciting when Notre Dame is getting ready to play, possibly in a college football playoff situation. I think like the portal thing, like just like an idea of like kind of like college football free agency. I like for just from our perspective, from our job, I think it's better that it's contained and that there's more stuff going on. So then it becomes like this big thing. And then even though there's while it's going on with recruiting, so this is still like a crazy busy month, and it's fun, man. I love it.
What's unfun about a little reckless speculation? You know, like anytime you can go from having really good evidence for things, video, going over film and that sort of thing that everyone can see. Sometimes you just got to throw out some speculation, right? Some guessing and all those other things. So that's what's fun about this. And like nothing is more also exciting than the unknown and possibilities, right? And I think this is the time of year for possibilities, right? Like what can the roster look like? Who will be the quarterback of the Notre Dame football team in 2023? I don't know, right? That person is out there. Yeah, I did see it. The person's out there, so it's you just don't know who it's going to be. Trying to wrap up a recruiting class, trying to add people from the portal, right? Like anytime a quarterback goes in the portal, like Brennan Armstrong goes in the portal today, and it's like, okay, like what could he look like in Notre Dame uniform, right? And I think that's fun, right? So I agree with Jamie, and we agree with all those things. So speaking of new additions to the to Notre Dame recruiting class, or possible additions, I should say, Kaleb Smith, wide receiver from Texas, is going to be announcing in about an hour, Jamie. And so before we turn on his film, I just want to kind of cover what you think of him as a player, and what do you think he could add to the Notre Dame football team?
Well, I think right away, speed jumps out. He's a fast player, and I think that's kind of what they needed for that fourth receiver. He's a guy who can obviously return kicks, and do that kind of thing, make an impact that way. I think that his acceleration jumps out on film. So I think you could see him being a guy who like takes a bubble, just and really does some damage there, be like a vertical threat type of guy. Like in that kind of sense, like you see him like how he was a Texas Tech commit. So Joey McGuire, the Texas Tech head coach, was at Baylor, and he was one of the guys who like kind of ran recruiting at Baylor. And one of the things that they did at Baylor was they grabbed all these like track guys, super fast dudes, guys that could, really go. And they kind of targeted that aspect. That was under Matt Rule originally. And then, stayed that way under Dave Aranda. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like where I see Kaleb Smith. He's this raw athlete that you can see that a guy with like a high ceiling. I think he's, raw is an important word, because I think, as a receiver, I think he's a guy who needs to put on weight. I want to know how physical he is. I want to see him run more of a route tree, all these kind of things. But you love the speed. You love the speed.
And when I was watching him play, the way his running style is it reminding me a lot of the late George Atkinson, where it's just kind of like it's like the high knees and just the acceleration, and it's kind of like narrow, right? There's not a lot of like wasted movement there, right? It's all kind of straight line, and that really reminded me of him. I don't see. So Mike McCarthy asks is if he's a Golden Tate type athlete. I don't see that from him.
So, no.
Golden was he was like just kind of magical in any sort of I have the ball situation, right? He was really strong, fighting for the ball, even though he's really small. When he had the ball in his hands, like he was a really good, after the catch kind of guy. Like I don't see them being like that. Maybe like a Devin Smith from Ohio State.
Ohio State, yeah,
something like that, where it's just speed, right? And it's just like like you said, the route running and the route running tree and that sort of thing is something that I could, he needs to work on. But like you said, the raw speed and the kind of the Baylor way of doing it. It's like, because we talked about it in the last show with how Notre Dame's got some good wide receivers, right? Like I think we're all excited about like Jaden Thomas. This is a really good comment from Eastside Irish. Like we desperately need speed. Like I think that's true. And I think that we talk. So we're all excited about Jaden Thomas and Deion Colsey. But like those guys aren't speed guys. And something that I've noticed the last couple of weeks watching Notre Dame play is that it takes those guys a long time to get down the field, right? So if you're trying to stretch the field vertical, it requires so much more from the offensive line, and then Drew Pine having to wait and that sort of thing, and allows the defense to adjust. So getting more vertical speed is a kind of a must for Notre Dame. So I see the questions that are coming up, so I'm going to get to those, but we're going to go over. I'm going to put up Kaleb Smith's film, and we're going to talk about him a little bit, and then we'll get to those questions. So I see those guys. So I'll get to those in just one second. So let me hit play on this, and then Jamie, we can just kind of talk it through as it's going.
Yeah. Okay. So you see him right there in the slot, and I mean, this is the kind of stuff you see from him, where you see like him just catching a screen and just taking it, right, and he's just running away from people. And I mean, it's kind of what you want out of a guy like that, or what Notre Dame doesn't have is that kind of guy, right? So it makes sense. And I would kind of say it's more of like almost like a Michael Young type, closer to that, for like a Notre Dame kind of comparison, in kind of that sense. Although I think Smith kind of pops off as a little bit faster, but in that kind of sense where he's that kind of guy. And obviously there's a ton of kick return stuff. And the main thing is you just see this guy run. You see him run, right? Like you see him run away from people. You see him beat angles, like pursuit angles. That's one thing. You see a guy just like run by people. And if you're not doing that at the high school level, and obviously, you're playing in Texas, you're playing against pretty good comp. I mean, literally all it takes with this thing is like one move gone.
Yeah.
Right. One move gone. And that's the same kind of thing. So, and is he going to be like a super dynamic guy after the catch where he's going to make like a ton of people miss? I haven't seen a lot of that on his film, but I do see guy scores a lot of long touchdowns. That's not a bad thing.
I mean, we didn't see a lot of that from Will Fuller, right? Like we saw some on like screens and that sort of thing, but you see here, but like not in terms of like the actual route, right? Like Fuller was at the catch kind of guy, or just running completely by you, get the ball in space and you run from there. So Just because it's not a yak guy doesn't mean that there can't be explosiveness there, to your
point. I mean it like in the sense where all of a sudden you're going to catch like, I mean, here, that's a nice little double move, little slug around the route, like slant and go. So you see like shades of kind of some stuff with him as a route runner and like what he can do. Right. I know I can't remember if it was the senior year or if it was his junior year, but he has a really nice little pivot route that he runs. This is just one where he's just running a simple bubble here. And look, this is the thing. Very small crease, just has to hit it. Has to hit it and gone. Right. And that's kind of like the main thing, right? It's just like, can you get a guy where all of a sudden it's like the defense makes one mistake. There's the nice little pivot route right there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But honestly, that's like one of the only times you see him do something like that. And because a lot of other stuff is bubbles, go balls, like just stuff like that, return game, right? That's what you see, like slant, like nice and simple. Oh, nice little like hop out of the way there, whatever. Like, so you see some like lateral ability. So it's not like he's just a straight line guy. Yeah, sorry.
And he doesn't seem super stiff either. Like
no,
I do see there's fluidity there, right? Like sometimes like a guy like DK Metcalf, like you could see like super stiff in the hips and that sort of thing. And obviously he's like a freak athlete, like a super freak athlete. And so he can make up for that. But Kaleb Smith, like stuff like that, like just moving in and out with the ball, like you could tell he's got some wiggle to him. He has some good instincts with that. And he's got pretty good feet as well. So the potential is there, right? Like you see the physical kind of traits and ability and that sort of thing. I mean, it just comes down to like, how much does he want to be like a great receiver, like a good receiver, like a good route runner and that sort of thing. And it's an unknown, right? And so we're watching this and it's like, all you can really say is you see the potential, right?
Yeah.
And that's what Notre Dame's counting on, right? Like they're counting on the potential of him being a hit, right? And with the speed and everything. So,
well, I think one of the things too is that, so the guy he reminds me of is Braden Lenzy, right? And like, because Lenzy, I think it took him a long time to really develop, right? It took him a long time to really develop. And I think this year you probably saw the most development from him. Unfortunately, I don't think they had the quarterback play to really, for him to really have like kind of a showcase year. Like, I mean, we've talked about a million times how many times he was missed when he was wide open. He could have had a much bigger year, but I see that kind of role for him where, I mean, he's gonna have a chance to be a big play guy, and I think that Devin Smith is exactly because that's what he was to that Ohio State offense.
He didn't catch a lot of passes. He caught like 30 passes for like 800 yards or whatever it was. So, it's different roles for different players. And if he comes in, right, like he's different than kind of the other guys in the class where it's like, it's just that straight home run. I mean, in a way, he's kind of similar to Hannafin in what you would kind of see them doing with him. Like Hannafin was a different size, right? Like he was a different kind of like he was a 6'3" guy, so kind of 220, right? So like kind of a Claypool, but like they're both kind of raw receivers, right?
Raw, yeah, just was more of, and then that's what you kind of saw. It was him running not much of a route tree. Like you saw him doing more of that other just the bubbles, the go balls and stuff like that.
Right. So if he was to join up, like a great fit in the class, kind of athlete that Notre Dame needs that we talked about before. And so let's, we'll see, right? Like I said, Matt feels good about it. But it is recruiting, right? We need look no further than last year when no one had anything written on Emil Wagner and he was not going to be in the class. And then next thing you know, everyone's hustling.
It was a surprise to Notre Dame.
Right. Yeah. So you just don't know. Right. So but as of right now, we feel good about it. So everyone's going to want to look to that at about 45 minutes. It's going to be a 6 p.m. Eastern announcement. So, all right, let's get into some questions from people. Just going to kind of not keep to the same theme, just as they came in. We're just going to jump around a little bit. So this one from Michael Prendergast. Gentlemen, what changes can we expect from Coach Freeman and staff going into next season?
I mean, it's tough to say right now because I think we don't know, is the staff going to stay intact, right? Because I think there's going to be, I mean, you're already seeing like the coaching carousel is like in full effect. And then guess what? The NFL coaching carousel is going to be still in effect. And what is that going to mean for, not just right now, but then also the NFL. And what is that going to mean for Al Golden? What's going to mean for Tommy Rees, right? What's it going to mean for some other guys that you just don't know about? Like that kind of stuff, like it can come out of nowhere, right? So I think I don't think there's going to be planned significant changes on the staff, but I think you could see significant changes because, I mean, guys, everybody's ambitious, right? Everybody's ambitious. They want promotions. They want chances to advance their career. So I think, you could see something like that. And, being like kind of the biggest changes. And I mean, outside of that, obviously, I think personnel, there's going to be I think you're going to see stuff happen in the portal. You're going to see Notre Dame get better in that way. And then obviously, I think it's got to be huge. Like the young guys kind of like coming in, it's going to be a very big recruiting class. I do think there's going to be, some other like Benjamin Morrison types where guys who can make like big impacts early. Right. And then, and some of those guys that didn't make an impact this year that were in the 2022 class, I think are going to make a big impact. So I think those are going to be the biggest changes.
Do you think that there will be, I don't know how to phrase this really. Like, I don't want to cleaning house. That's the word or the phrase I was thinking, but I don't think that's a fair one. Do you think that Freeman there will be, you know how, so a lot of the time when a new coach comes in, and it's usually when the coach is coming into like a bad situation, right? And there's a lot of transfers out at that point because it's like you got to get rid of the guys who don't really fit what the coach is doing, or that can, his kind of philosophy, I guess. Do you think we could see that at Notre Dame like a year later? Because when Freeman came in,
it was a very happy,
so excited,
very happy transition. It wasn't like he was going to come in and be like, the Homer Simpson meme, like, Rod, Todd, you're cut, whatever, all these memes. Like, I don't think it was going to be anything like that. He was definitely not going to do that when he first came in. It's just like one of those things. It's like you get all this goodwill with the team celebrating. By the way, 2 days later, it's like, I don't know if you're going to come back. Like, I don't think that they were ever going to do that. Yeah, I think there's going to be some guys. I mean, I also think it's like
but when I'm asking, like, if there's going to be more than, like, will it get to the point where fans are like, this is a lot of people, like that's what I'm talking about.
I think so, but I think like, I can't remember what it was, like maybe like 2 years ago, where there was like 13 guys who ended up transferring, right? And people were like, what? That's crazy. Oh my God. Like, what's wrong? I thought Notre Dame had a good culture and stuff. And I was like, look at where these guys are on the depth chart. And I think it was like the only guy who was in the 2 deep was Ovie Oghoufo. Like, he was the only guy. And everybody else, because even people like say like Jack Lamb, people were like, what, Jack Lamb? It's like, Jack Lamb's, I mean, he didn't play this year. Like, and he was healthy. Like, that was
Colorado.
Right. Or I just meant like went on that year for Notre Dame. Like, he didn't play that year. Like, it was like he wasn't in the mix. Like, there's a lot of things like that. So I think just by process of elimination, I don't think it's talking, out of school to say that like Notre Dame had this situation at corner in this last game, right? Where you're like, wow, they're, they got 2 corners down, right? Well, Jade Mickey hadn't played more than 30 plays all in a game all year. And that was the previous week before where there's garbage time and then Cam Hart got hurt.
Yeah.
He played every play in that game. And you're like, well, they didn't go to those other young guys who Morrison and Mickey already passed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe those guys stick around, but I would say it would be probably unlikely that all of them do. And that's just kind of how it is, right? It's just like, look at all the kind of things with like KJ Wallace and Kari Gee and like all these guys. It's just, that's how it goes. That's how it goes now. It's like, you know that you're not going to kind of be a factor. And there's also like adding in the guys that are like graduating. And I mean, and I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying like Jack Kaiser's looking to go out, but I could totally see like Jack Kaiser in a kind of a George Takis kind of way, where last year George Takis said he was coming back. I believe he like put out a social media thing saying like,
I think he did too. Actually.
He's coming back.
Yeah.
And then like a month later, he's in the portal. And so, which makes me think, so I'm like, oh, maybe he didn't even talk about them that he's coming back. Like, I don't know. Right. Because, you know, and not that he wouldn't have played, he would have played at Notre Dame, but it's like it was obviously there was a log jam, and he, you know, probably saw the writing on the wall. It's like, well, I'm going to get a chance to play a lot if I go to Boston College, and McNulty was there and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I, you know, if Jack Kaiser's not starting next year, is he going to be like, you know, I really want to come back for the 5th year to do this? Like, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. Right. But there's, or like Andrew Kostovic. If Andrew Kostovic's the starting left guard next year, then yeah, he's going to be back, and I'm sure whatever. But if he thinks that he's not going to be the starter, then I mean, I think he's going to
want to play.
You want to play, and like a lot of these guys still want to have a shot at the league, right? So, I think there's a lot of that kind of uncertainty with the roster in a lot of spots, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, and the other thing is there's always someone that's unhappy that we don't know about, that might just like all of a sudden you're like, wow, that sucks. This guy, you thought he had high hopes for him, but he's gone, right? Like that's, and so there's always that thing too. I think I would be shocked every year. I think you're going to see like 10 to 15 guys in the portal from not just from Notre Dame, but pretty much everywhere, right? I just think that's just kind of the way it is these days.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Next question from Michael. What are both your thoughts in regards to quarterback name declared for the portal? For me, I'm all in on Hudson Card. I like Leary, but Notre Dame doesn't need another injury-prone quarterback. So first, Michael, if you weren't on the show yesterday, I would recommend watching that, because we talked about Hudson Card and Dan Leary quite a bit. Brennan Armstrong in the portal today. What are your thoughts on him? I mean, obviously, if this was a year ago, I think people would have been very fired up to get Brennan Armstrong out of the portal. And this year, I think that is definitely changed. You don't want to put a bunch of bad tape out there, and Brennan Armstrong did. So do you have kind of an opinion on Brennan Armstrong, and just like whether or not you think Notre Dame should kick the tires on that?
I don't think they should kick the tires on him. I mean, obviously he had a horrible season this year, but I would say even when he was having the great season, I just kind of think his style in the kind of offense that he was having the success with was basically like almost like 10 personnel, 4 verts, like we're just going to keep going. Yeah. And I just, and he was kind of like a little bit gunslinger-ish, and I just don't think that's the right guy for Notre Dame. But I do think like if he goes to the right school, if you were like, man, Brennan Armstrong had a monster season, you know, I don't know, I'm just picking Texas Tech. I don't know. I'm just throwing a random school out there.
Well, I mean, look at what Penix did at Washington.
Perfect example, because, and that's the thing. He went to you know what, where Brennan Armstrong should go. He should go to Syracuse. And I don't know if they'll want him because they got Garrett Schrader, the other kid that they got, the young freshman kid who looks pretty good too. But that's where his OC is. Robert and I is there, and that's the guy. So like, I mean, do they I don't think they have the receivers they have, and I'd be weary. I don't know if they're gonna have a good O-line. But if I was Brendan Armstrong, I'd be like, do you got a good O-line? Because he just got destroyed this year. And I think that's the main thing.
Yeah. I mean, Arizona, right? Look what Jed Fish did with Jaden DeLaura. I mean, I don't know what his eligibility is, but I mean, look, there's a lot of offenses that a quarterback can jump into, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but like Card, yeah. So I would say, look, watch the show from yesterday, Card and Leary. We talked about. Do you think? Are you? This is part of the question, the injury prone piece. So let's answer that. Are you scared off by? Let's say Devin Leary is cleared, right? Let's say he gets cleared and he can practice in spring, right? Are you scared off by his injury? The fact that he had a pec injury?
No.
Is anything injury wise with him? Would it scare you off?
No, I think people overreact to the injury prone thing. I think a lot of times it's luck.
I mean, Jack Cohn had a broken foot and he ended up being fine.
People bring up about Buckner being injury prone all the time. I'm like, the guy just got a guy land on full body on his shoulder. What is that? That doesn't mean he's in that. What does that have to do with him tweaking his hamstring the year before? That's nothing. Like that is complete nonsense. And it gets brought up all the time.
Yeah.
By not just like fans, but by people in Notre Dame media too. And I'm just like, what? But I just kind of let it go because I'm whatever. But now here's my chance to rant on it because I just think it's dumb. It makes no sense. Like, how is his ACL connected to his whatever? If a guy had torn his knee, Sean Crawford, that's a different story. Because you're like, blown knee, Achilles, blown knee again, all these kind of things. And I'm like, there might be something structurally wrong with Sean Crawford. That's a different story. But if someone has different injuries that aren't in any way related, that's not injury prone to me. I don't know. That's just, and whatever. Like, I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night. My wife is a physiotherapist, so she would tell me if something was related to whatever. And it's just, there's some stuff that, so if someone has like a bad shoulder and it's like a chronically bad shoulder, and that's the thing, if you knew like Devin Leary has missed this, and he tore the pec and then he tore the other pec or something or whatever. If all these things are related, then I'd be worried about it. But because as far as I know, it's not. Yeah. I don't think it's anything to worry about.
I didn't sleep in a Holiday Inn Express, or I did sleep in a Holiday Inn Express, but it was with my wife, who's a physiotherapist. Yeah. That's how you get to say the things that you say. All right. Evan Olson says, what differences are you seeing in the players, Marcus Freeman and Stafford recruiting, besides maybe just getting better players, i.e. more focus on speed, less concern on position fit, etc.?
I think speed. Position fit, I think that was one of the things that, Kelly did that a lot too, right? Where they took a lot of guys that were like, Cam Hart type athletes. Yeah. Julian Love too was like a guy that it was like, they were like, yeah, corner, but maybe he's going to be safe. Obviously playing safety pretty good in the NFL right now, but it was like, they didn't kind of know for sure where he was going to be. And they've taken a ton of guys like that over the years.
Pro size,
perfect example. Right. And I think, excuse me. I think speed is the biggest thing, like just athleticism in general. Like they've taken guys, it's faster guys. And I think if you look at Notre Dame comparatively to a lot of teams and what they're lacking, it's like one of these things. It's like when Freeman's talking about, we have to rely on being, an offensive and defensive line driven program. It's not like that has to change, but if you're just that, then you're Wisconsin. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you got to be more than Wisconsin, right? You got to be more than that. You have to have more better overall team speed to compete against the Alabamas, the Georgias, the USCs, right? Like in what they're doing, right? Because that's the other thing. Like, if you want to get one of the things in this game, USC isn't always going to have a terrible defense like they had this year. I mean, they're going to get better, right?
Yeah.
So once that happens, you're going to get into a position where a lot of those USC games are going to be like shootouts. They're going to be shootouts because it's like they're going to have so much team speed and so much talent that you kind of have to match them in that way. Not even just with the DBs to cover them and whatever.
Yeah.
It's got to be like, well, you have a guy who can take it 60. Well, we got a guy who can take it 60, and like so forth, right? Like that's how it's kind of got to be.
Yeah. Joe Bro asks, what are you guys' thoughts on college football playoffs in 2024? So it was announced that it's going to be expanded, right? So it's going to go from 4 to 12. It's one of those things for me. Like I'm resigned to it, right? It just is what it is. I think that's the way the sport was trending. I do dislike how everything is viewed through the lens of playoffs and positioning and that whole thing. I don't like how every game is kind of a referendum on someone's playoff position. I don't like that. Right? That's not fun. I don't like that whole conversation. It makes me not want to partake in conversations around college football. Like, so I don't watch like any ESPN shows or Fox shows or anything because it's all kind of narrative based. And to me, that's not the fun part of the sport. But at the same time, like, you know, if it's going to be a thing where the conferences are basically setting it up to get their premier programs in position. So like USC this year, for example, and like every conference does this, right? Like, you know, the Big Ten does it, the SEC does it, ACC does it. Like USC this year, like they avoid Oregon, they avoid Washington, right? Those are the two of the best teams in the conference.
They would have lost at least one of those games.
It's just, you know, and it's like, well, okay, right? And then so then you avoid them in they're playing the same team they've already played, right? And they lost to them, right? So it's like you get two shots at one team to kind of get into the playoffs. So to me, it's just like I don't like that aspect of the sport. So if it's gonna be like that, then if you make it 12, then at least there's more at-large teams, right? There's a chance for like Notre Dame, for example, like with a 12-team playoff, like this game they just played would have been a huge game, right? It was just enormous. And part of it going into it was like Notre Dame isn't really playing for anything, right? You're playing for a chance to play in a New Year's Six game, you know, in a top 10 ranking. But I mean, that's superficial stuff. Playoffs are obviously much more than that. So I guess you have that opportunity and that sort of thing. It just, again, I'm just kind of resigned, but what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Well, I love the home playoff games.
Yeah.
I like that. Love that aspect of that. I hope that you see a lot of teams from the North get some of those playoff dates. So some of these teams have to go up in the South, because I think like one of the reasons why, I mean, it's a small thing, but it's like one of the reasons why Clemson has lost to Notre Dame both times when they've come to Notre Dame is because they came up in November. I think that adds something to do with it, because you just make them a little bit more uncomfortable. And that, I mean, it is a home field advantage. It is something, right? That, that helps. So I think like that part of it, I really like. I just do think that there's like more college football is just good in general. I don't watch any of the, like you said, I'm not someone who pays attention to the college football playoff review, ranking show. I think it's just like a joke of a thing. Like maybe it's something I would have watched when I was a kid or whatever, but it's like I'm not into that at all. It's just like why I don't like watching Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit during the games, because it's always talking about that kind of like big pictures that they never know anything about the game. It's infuriating, right? So, yeah. So I do think it's more fun. I, you know, there's this kind of notion going around that it's like, well, it's just going to mean more championships for Bama and for Georgia and for all these schools. They're already winning.
Yeah, I don't. What does that mean more? Like,
what does it mean more? They're already winning all the time.
Yeah, they're already winning them.
All this, to me, all it does is give them a chance to kind of screw up.
Yeah,
and they probably will win. They'll probably win, but if you give them another chance to screw up, or if all of a sudden you have to play an extra game and say Bryce Young gets hurt, like that's going to mean something, right? That's going to mean something, or you're going to lose, because even those teams can't handle certain losses, right? So, like what happens if that, and that's all these kind of scenarios are like, get out of here, Matt, with his friggin' comment. It's true though. Like, it's one of these things where it's like, I mean, I don't think it's like, honestly, I'll throw it to everybody in the chat. Do people enjoy the college football rankings show? Do people are like, man, I got to tune into this? I mean, if you do, I'm like, you
were asked the question. You can say if you don't like it. Like, you don't have to like it.
Are you single? You don't have a lot to do. Like, just whatever. Like, you don't got kids. You got whatever. I mean, you don't like other kind of culture. You don't like whatever. I spent a little bit more time doing than Tuesday night. I mean, I don't mind a little maction on a Tuesday night, but I don't want college football rankings on a Tuesday night. I don't care about it.
Sid doesn't like it. Chris doesn't like it.
Yeah.
Maybe they're all old though. I have a question for you. I have a question, like almost a strategy question. So, Joe Bro is out. He's a no. That feels like a no to me. So this year there have been a lot of situations where a player has just popped up on like, oh, Tariq Bracy's not playing this week.
Yes.
Tobias Merriweather has a concussion. Yeah. Jason Adamalola is not playing against BC.
Yeah.
Right. That's come up a lot. And it's like, this isn't happening during the game, the previous game. It's happening during the week. Does Marcus Freeman need to think about that? Does he need to like make a change? Because look at I like the idea of it, right? Like the idea, we're going to be tough and we're going to practice hard and we're going to be physical. We're going to be a physical team. We have to be a physical team, right? And the idea is if you get guys hurt, then okay, that's just kind of the cost of doing business, right? We're going to be a physical team, and therefore, that's what we're going to have to deal with, right? But then you come in against your rival in the last game of the year and you miss 21 tackles. So what's the payoff, right? What's the where's the payoff there? You're getting guys hurt, but then you don't have a good tackling game in the last game of the season against one of the best teams on your schedule, right? So that's kind of how I look at it. Like, is there diminishing returns on that? So what do you think? Like, does Notre Dame need to do that, especially in the playoff where it's 12 teams now? Are you going to be physical for, X amount of months now? Like, I don't know. It just seems like something that needs to be looked at the very least.
I think it's a fair question because I don't know. I mean, I don't know specifically if that's like they were worn down and that was.
I'm just the fact of it. I don't know why. I'm just saying the fact is that they missed a ton of tackles, right? Like they just
and they had for the most part. For the most part, I would say, other than maybe like the BYU game, they had tackled pretty well. In the second half of the year, they had tackled really well. So I mean, it had seemed
it was out of nowhere. To be fair, it was out of nowhere.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. I do think it's concerning when there's a lot of guys getting concussions from practice.
Yeah.
And there seemed to be a lot of that. So there has to be a fair balance, because you don't see, that's one thing. And I know it's a totally different thing. Like the NFL, it's such a more physical game. Like guys are just, basically being bandaged up every week just to be able to play all the time. But one thing you just don't see a lot of like guys getting concussed during the week. And that to me, it would be like, we need to look at this. If I was like the trainers for Notre Dame, I'd be like, this is more frequent, because it definitely was more frequent this year.
Yeah.
And I think, I can't remember, one of the person that brought up in the chat about how Tobias Merriweather, missed several games because of it. I mean, if he doesn't come, like if he's not available for the bowl game, that is really worrying.
Yeah.
It's very worrying. Yeah.
I have reason to believe he'll be cleared, but so I think he will be. When I found out about Merriweather being hurt in practice, it was like, how? Like what? Like what?
Maybe jumping up for a ball, like
landing
wrong,
maybe
maybe
his head or something. I mean, I don't know that that's what happened, but it's just like there's a lot of stuff, right? Like Raritan gets hurt in practice. And look, it's ACL, right? Like maybe he maybe took a wrong step or something, right? It's just Bauman, though, he's ACL in practice. So it's just, I don't know. I think it's something to think about. I think that's something they have to consider and that sort of thing.
Bo Bauer, another guy.
Bo Bauer. Yeah. Tom, let's see. Tom Robertazzi asks, would they expand the scholarships with extra games or playoffs?
No, that's a good question. I think it actually might be something that they need to look into because of that. I don't know. I mean, if you think about it too, 85 guys in the team, you should have enough guys that should be able. I mean, there's more than enough guys.
So in the NFL, you carry 53, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's you should be able to do it with 85.
I actually don't think it's a good enough excuse, because there's just guys who just don't play because they're like, this guy's not good enough. And it's like, well, he's on scholarship.
Yeah.
So if you kind of need to play somebody, it should be your job to get this guy ready to play in a situation, whatever. Because if you think about it, there's basically only, 50 guys that actually play, right? Out of that 85.
Yeah.
There's probably like 35 that don't, right? So for the most part, some other guys get in here and there, but so I don't know. I am actually, at first I was like, hey, that's a kind of good idea, but no, I don't think so.
Well, it's just like, okay, Notre Dame has 85, right? And there's that. I mean, because we were talking about, guys like, DBs and stuff, like Justin Walters doesn't travel. Barnes and Riley don't travel, right? I think the only one who traveled was Chance Tucker.
Yeah.
So, it's
because they're not even, and this is what I worry about, because it's like, those guys aren't even on special teams.
Right.
And I know you want to put like, these are our best guys, so we're putting starters on special teams, and it matters. I mean, obviously, hey, it made a difference. They blocked 7 punts this year. But Prince Culley wasn't a starter, and he found his way to become a guy on special teams.
Jordan Botelho, Junior Tuihalamaka, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so there has to be, it has to matter to you and get on that too. I don't know. I would say it's not like when you have that many guys and there's extra, and it's like they're not in the mix at all. I guess it's very rare those guys ever play. In you ever get to a point where it's like you had enough injuries where that guy has to play. That just doesn't happen all that often. And the only The one that kind of pops out to me is, oh gosh, I forget his name, but he was like a former tight end who ended up playing D tackle. He was a tight end / D lineman that Elston signed back in the day, and he had to
Nicholas?
play. No, oh god, no. He was a D lineman at Notre Dame, but it was the year, when 2014 when everybody got hurt. So Day, Jones, they were all out for the backstretch, and it was like they already didn't, like Daniel Cage was having to play a lot.
Man. I'm annoyed. I know.
Yeah.
Now I can't think of it either. This is annoying. This is going to drive me crazy.
Anyways, he was never to be heard from again. After that, and
Matuska.
Yeah.
Was it Matuska?
It was Jacob Matuska.
There it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boom. And I don't have to be bothered by it.
Yeah.
A lot of people are asking about Peyton Bowen in the chat. What I would say is, like, Notre Dame's meeting with him, and they're going to go to his high school. They're going to go talk to him. And I already got it, Matt. I already got Matuska. I know this. I know it. Anyway, they're going to go to his high school and they're going to talk to him. And, obviously a lot of people think it's a done deal. And a lot of people think, people have optimism or whatever. The only thing I can say is early signing day of 19 days. So we're going to find out, right? I mean, I think there's a lot been said both ways, really. And he's still, when I say we, I mean we as if I'm a part of their camp, which I'm not. He's still doing he's still talking to Oklahoma, right? It's still there, still visiting, still doing these things. So, he obviously did not shut it down when he said he would. But look, it's his decision to make, and he's free to make it. And so everyone's just going to have to sit tight, one way or the other. Do you have any other thought on Peyton Bowen?
No, I have no thought. I would just say check for the updates after that visit.
Yeah.
And you'll, and the other thing is too, is we totally might hear visit went great. Told Marcus Freeman everything he needed, or no, Marcus Freeman's not going to be there. He's saving his visit. So he told Chris O'Leary and Al Golden, whoever else is going to be there, he told them everything they wanted to hear, said this, whatever. But then who cares if he still visits with Oklahoma after that? Yeah. So, I mean, until he actually comes out and, puts out his notes app statement or gets Hayes Fawcett to create a graphic saying that he's decommitting, then you shouldn't believe anything. You shouldn't believe anything of that kind of nature, because he hasn't done it. He hasn't done it. I don't care what Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma people were saying that he was going to do it a long time ago. Yeah. So, I mean, he might do it, but he hasn't done it yet. So we'll see.
Yeah. I'll be surprised when he stays. When does Notre Dame ever win the 5-star battles?
This is Michael Mayer.
This is a good time for me to point out. This is a good time for me to point out that Kyle Hamilton committed to Notre Dame, had a girlfriend who went to another college and took no visits and signed on the day he was supposed to, and came in and was an All-American right away. And so, a lot of people get mad about that sort of thing, or like he skipped the bowl game, but he did. How dare you? I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna let this go. Okay. Kyle Hamilton was not a 3-star. He was
not a 3-star. What?
He was a 3-star at the beginning, and then he came up. Here's the difference. The difference between like what the services had him at and the way that he was recruited is not. They're incongruent, right? He was a priority for Georgia. He was a priority for Clemson. He was a priority for Ohio State. He was a priority for all those schools. Notre Dame won the recruitment. So, I still stand by it too. And not only that, he blew up. He blew up as a senior, never took any visits, never took one visit. not even a hint of a visit, right? Like it would just, that wasn't a thing. So I guess my point is like these things do happen, right? That Notre Dame gets the 5-star and all right, Matt, this is just Jamie. What is Matt is not good is the thing.
Well, okay, here's composite 5-star. Michael Mayer is a composite 5-star. Jalen Sneed was a composite 5-star. That's 2 guys, recent guys.
I think the point is that there's some examples where a player is looking around and they'll stay, right? And there's other examples where a player's looking around and they'll go, right? And I think that Keon Keeley, perfect example. Like to Sid Irish's point, like if Notre Dame, if Peyton Bowen ends up choosing Oklahoma, there's no way no one could say like the writing wasn't on the wall, right? Like it absolutely was, you know?
Yeah.
So I get it, right? I understand everyone looking at all of this, and I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, you know, settle down, you know, oh, don't worry about it. Like I can't say that, right? And the truth of the matter is that, you know, I think if you follow Matt has been very plugged into this recruitment from the very beginning, right? And he is only, oh, there it is, Matt, right there. There's Matt. There's my guy, coming through. So Matt's been on this at the very beginning, and he's only reported what is fact of the matter, right? Direct quotes from his mom, right, and gotten the facts and that sort of thing. And I think the reason that Matt is so hesitant to kind of say like, oh, this is how I feel or this is what I think it is because I think that Matt is aware of the fact that Peyton Bowen might not be completely sure what he's going to do. So if Peyton Bowen's not sure, then how can Matt or anyone else, frankly, make a determination about what they think is going to happen when Peyton Bowen may not know what's going to happen or what he wants to do. So I think that's where it's at, right? I don't think Matt certainly knows or anyone else knows exactly what's going to happen, and they're not saying or they're kind of holding back. That's definitely not true. I just think sometimes there's the truth is unknown to kind of everyone. So that's what I would say about that. What do you?
I would just say too, with just Sid Irish, some of the stuff like Andy is always a few players away. I would say there have been more than a few players away in recent years. And I think one of the things you've seen with Notre Dame and recruiting under Freeman, especially the last few years, is that, I mean, there's been an uptick in the number of guys that they've landed, the number of top 100 guys, the number of 4-star guys, the number of just in general, right? And I think of course you want to land more 5-star kids. Of course you do. Like it goes without saying, right? At the same time, you can't say, well, this is the same old Notre Dame, because it's not, because they have recruited better under Freeman. And I don't know if is this the peak of Freeman? I don't think so. Like, I don't think so in terms of recruiting, because I'd like to think that I think that this current team, I think, will probably be the least talented team that Marcus Freeman will coach at Notre Dame. Just in terms of like raw talent and just like NFL guys and period. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, they're probably going to do better because they're going to have more talent. And then I don't see really recruiting really stopping. And I also think Notre Dame will get to a point where if it's just like anything with Notre Dame, if they lose enough or if they do enough to get close, then they eventually change. It takes a long time, but they eventually change. And so whether it's some crazy fans being like, here's millions of dollars to, this quarterback to whatever, but things will happen to get in that way, especially if you get closer and you look like you're actually have a chance. If you're really only like a couple players away, then I think it'll change even more.
Evan Olson makes a comment. With Freeman, they'll lose out on more 5-stars because they'll actually be competing for them. Can't lose Keeley if he was never committed in the first place.
Great point.
I think that's true. I think what Freeman needs is you need. When I say you, I mean him. Like speaking from his point of view, Freeman needs like someone like Dylan Edwards to be what he is in college, what he is in high school, because that guy has juice. You know what I mean? And when and especially when I was in the Coliseum, like you feel it. Like Kaleb Williams has that star power, and it just is there, and you feel it in the air. And you need someone like that. It's like someone like Dylan Edwards. Like every time you give him the ball, anytime he's in space, anytime he's running a route, or anytime he's going out for a pattern and you see he's open, and the crowd just kind of gets excited, right? You need someone like that to hit. If that guy hits, then there's juice in with the program and all those things. Go for
it. This is 100% how it works. It's kind of crazy how that this is what it kind of takes, other than like if you're throwing large bags of cash out there or whatever, A&M style. But really what happens is, like, look at Clemson. Taj Boyd, who was a highly recruited guy, like a very highly ranked guy, he leads to Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson leads to Trevor Lawrence, and who leads to Hunter Johnson, who leads to DUJ Uwangale, who leads to Kate Klubnik. And I know, the jury's out on whatever the other quarterbacks, but these were high 5-star kids, whatever, right? So that's how Clemson ends up getting that, because they get the rep of that, where they are able to do that.
Look at Notre Dame offensive line. Same thing.
Yes. Same thing.
Zach Martin leads to Q. It's the same deal.
Lincoln Riley is a perfect example too, because takes Baker Mayfield as a transfer, right? Baker Mayfield, former walk-on at Texas Tech, transfers to Oklahoma, wins a Heisman, takes another transfer in Kyler Murray, who was a very highly ranked kid, right? But turns that guy into a Heisman. They didn't sign the top quarterback in each class until they started doing that. They signed Rattler. I know it didn't work out with Rattler, but while they had Rattler, they signed Kaleb Williams. Now they got Malachi, what's his face, like Nelson or whatever, right? Like Malachi Nelson. And guess what? The next guy, because of what Kaleb Williams is doing now, they're going to get another guy. Like if I told you that Ohio State, how are they getting all these guys? It's because they're stacking them on top of one another. That's just how it works. So really, like, what needs to happen, like you said, that's a perfect example of like a Dylan Edwards, is you need guys like that to kind of like build it up, and then you can continue to add to it. And probably what Notre Dame needs the most is for that to happen at quarterback, right?
Yeah.
So like they need, I mean, it doesn't matter who it is, but they need one guy, whether that is CJ Carr eventually, whether it's Kenny Minchie, whether it's, Steve, whoever, to be like, oh, this guy like completely surpassed expectations and became like this first-round quarterback and is like this actual guy, because that's how you get to the next guy. That's it. It happens like that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Brady Quinn leads to Jimmy Clausen, leads to Dane Christ. Right. And then Weiss leaves, and then that kind of that all ends. Right. But it's like they were, highly touted players. So that's where it is. Jamie, I think we can leave it there. I think that's a good place to leave it. We'll come back next week where I assume there will be more of the same stuff, right? It'll be more portal. Maybe there'll be more players announcing. Maybe we can talk some football stuff. We can do some season recap type things, season review, player, position reviews and that sort of thing. So thank you again for everyone for tuning in. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button, right? You're going to want to stick in with us all off season as we head to the bowl game and recruiting and all those other things. Hit up irisportsdaily.com and become a member there. The board is on fire with topics and articles and insight and all those other things. So you're going to want to stay tuned in. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in. Again, once more, I'll say it one more time. First time listening. If you liked it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We will talk to you guys next week.